Sure.
Om. Om. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, 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 and beneficence be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. So, good morning or good afternoon, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our class on how to know God, Swami Prabhavananda's translation of and commentary on Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. We're starting chapter 2, and I'll ask for comments and questions after we've read what the sutra is that we're studying. Ramadas?
This is Sutra 1 on page 95. Austerity, study, and the dedication to the fruits of one's work to God. These are the preliminary steps towards yoga.
There we have it. Austerity, study, and the dedication of the fruits of one's work to God. These are essentially Patanjali's very quick summary of the yamas and niyamas, the restraints and observances that he recommends as the first aspects of the practice of his yoga. So any comments or questions before we begin? Anything from your own wisdom or experience, or any concern or question that these things raise in your mind? All right, Haima dear, please read on.
Thank you, Brother Shankara. Good afternoon, everyone. We are on page 105 in the book. The dedication of the fruits of one's work to God is a spiritual exercise of vital importance, especially to those who are compelled by their duties to lead very active lives. It is known as Karma Yoga, the way to union with God through the performance of God-dedicated action. In following Karma Yoga, the devotee's whole life becomes one unending ritual, since every action is performed as an offering of devotion to God, not in the hope of one's personal gain or advantage. Oh, let me go back and read one more time. I made a mistake. In following Karma Yoga, the devotee's whole life becomes one unending ritual, since every action is performed as an offering of devotion to God, not in the hope of one's personal gain or advantage. Needless to say, the actions done in this spirit must be right actions. We must never offer to God an action which seems to us at that particular moment and stage of our development to be wrong.
All right, let's just hold it there.
Sure.
Karma Yoga. For those of you who want to know more about what is meant by karma yoga and this living of life as a sacrament or a ritual. What is a sacrament? A manifestation of the hidden grace within, which is the whole idea of living sacramentally, as Sri Krishna puts it. And by Sri Krishna, I'm gesturing to chapters 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 of Bhagavad Gita. I recommend highly Swami Prabhavananda's translation of Bhagavad Gita, simply because it was constructed, and I say constructed, by the Swami and Christopher Isherwood to reveal to us what Sri Krishna said, without scholarly commentary, without any exposition. It's simply, what did Krishna say, as accurately as Swami Prabhavananda could translate it, and as accurately and wonderfully as Christopher Isherwood could put that into the best English. So if you want to know what is meant by karma yoga, study chapters 3. The very end of chapter 2 is good too, but especially chapters 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now, that sounds like a lot if you just don't know the book, but there are only 700 verses to the Gita. So if you don't have a lot of scholarly commentary and exposition, it's a very quick read. So any comments or questions about what is meant by karma yoga, what is meant by living sacramentally or ritually, or anything of that nature? Okay.
Do you want me to go back in following karma yoga from there, Brother Shankar?
Yeah,
One time?
please.
That might be good. In following karma yoga, the devotee's whole life becomes one unending ritual, since every action is performed as an offering of devotion to God, not in the hope of one's personal gain or advantage. Needless to say, the actions done in the spirit must be right actions. We must never offer to God an action which seems to us at that particular moment and stage of our development to be wrong. And we must work always to the very best of our ability. We dare not offer our second best.
When the Swami says we dare not offer our second best, this does not mean to be self-judgmental. It does not mean to be a perfectionist. It means simply do your best. And if at the end of what you've done, you don't feel it to be your best, just say, well, Lord, I'm offering it anyway. I'll see if I can do better next time. As Swami Swahananda used to say to us again and again, about when we would engage in some sort of looking back and some sort of self-accusation or judgment on ourselves, or if we were doing that with somebody else, being judgmental about somebody else, he would say quite emphatically, what's done is done, go forward. So this does not mean we have to be a perfectionist or we have to do everything perfectly, but we just strive not to do or offer our second best. Any comments or questions about this? This is a key point. A lot of people stumble over this. They say, how can I offer things when I do things so imperfectly? All right, dear, please read on.
To dedicate the fruits of one's work to God is to work with non-attachment. Having done the best that we know, we must not despair if our work has disappointing results or is harshly criticized, or disregarded altogether.
Now read that again, because this is where we so often stumble.
To dedicate the fruits of one's work to God is to work with non-attachment. Having done the best that we know, we must not despair if our work has disappointing results, or is harshly criticized, or disregarded altogether.
And we've all experienced exactly those things. Disappointing results, having been criticized by others for what we did or how we did it, or, and this happens particularly in the workplace, what we've handed in, so to speak, or done, somehow it just isn't, the things pass us by, and what we've done is not used or taken into account. And people get very upset about this oftentimes. I've had many conversations with people about their experiences at work. And the Swami is offering us the solution, though it is not easy to do. It is not easy to do, particularly when, as he says, we have disappointing results or are criticized, particularly when it's harshly and rudely criticized, and then if it's discarded altogether. Anything at all before we go on? Okay, please go on, dear.
By the same token, we must not give way to pride and self-regarding vanity if the results of our work are successful and win popular praise. Only we can know if we have done our best, and that knowledge is our only legitimate reward. One more time, only we can know if we have done our best, and that knowledge is our only legitimate reward.
So this is the flip side of that coin about disappointing results and so on. When we succeed, there's no reason whatsoever not to be exultant that we have succeeded. But let the exultation come and go. Don't hang on to it. Don't be prideful. Don't puff yourself up. All these things. Why are these mentioned? Because this is what we do. All of us. We're prey to this. We may get past it. We may get to the point where it's no longer. But we all know that even in this life, in all likelihood, we've had those moments when we've hung on to a success because it makes us feel so good. Once again, anything from anyone about this? Okay?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just kind of reflecting back in the professional life that I've had,
Yes.
and the little bit of professional life left. That one sentence, last thing, seems to be the only tactical thing that I can hold on to. I mean, everything else it's nice to be able to think that, you'll have a equanimous viewpoint when you're going through your professional ups and downs. But this last sentence, only we can know if you have done our best, and that knowledge is our only legitimate reward. I think we can kind of hold on to that as an anchor. Everything else is probably a little superfluous. It may take quite a bit of practice to make that happen.
You are so very right, dear. It will take practice, and our own knowledge of how well we've done, and what the circumstances actually were within which we were working, which no one else can know. No one else knows what's going on in our home, what's going on inside us because of what's going on in our home, what's going on in the lives of those we care about, or who we don't care about, but who insist on making themselves present to us. And when I say we don't care about them, I mean in a personal affectionate sense, naturally we care about them as the divine being. But, that's a difference between that and having a personal relationship with someone. But there are some people who insist on making themselves present to us, though it's not all that welcome. They can't begin to know what it is that's going on. And so their judgments and their praise, their criticism is equally empty from that point of view. Thank you for your remarks.
I think we also have to ask ourselves when it occurs to us that maybe we have disappointing results, who are we trying to please?
Yes, exactly, dear. Exactly. We have nothing to prove. We really have nothing to prove. We are the children of the divine. This is our life because of that, and it is not a meritocracy. We are who we are and what we are, and we're doing our very best with what we have, almost all the time. There are very few people who aren't doing their best. And Swami Swahananda would get very impatient with those who criticized people for being somehow unmotivated, and calling them lazy and somehow unworthy. He would say, no, no, no. They simply have not discovered their zeal. They have not discovered what it is that will move them forward and make them go forward. And so encourage them, support them, don't criticize them. And Cindy had a teacher who, in the presence of people who were criticizing others, would say, well, all that may be true, but we're just going to go on and love them anyway. And this is very powerful advice from these great ones, that we just stand in our own way when we project our sense of insufficiency or inadequacy and self-accusation when we project that onto others. Any comments or questions? Okay.
All men and women of genuine greatness and personal integrity do their duty in this spirit, even though they may be professed atheists, just because it is their duty. But if they lack devotion to God, if their ideal objective is within time and the material world, it will be almost impossible for them not to despair when they see their cause apparently defeated and their life work brought to nothing. It is only the devotee of Karma Yoga who need never despair, because it is only he who is capable of absolute non-attachment toward the fruits of action. It's been said before, and it will bear constant repeating, that non-attachment is not indifference. It has nothing to do with fatalism. The fatalist is necessarily solvenly in his work. What does it matter whether he tries hard or not? What must come will come anyway. Those critics, and they are many, who dismiss Hindu philosophy as fatalistic, show thereby their complete failure to understand the spirit of Karma Yoga. The fatalist's attitude toward the results of his work is not non-attachment. It is indifference born of weakness, laziness, and cowardice. If by some stroke of luck he wins a little unearned success, his fatalism will disappear in a flash. He will not think fate for his good fortune. On the contrary, we shall hear him proclaiming to all the world how well he has worked for his objective and how deservedly he has gained it.
This is Swami Prabhavananda spoke a little harshly here about those of the fatalistic temperament. Swami Prabhavananda was fatherly. Swami Swahananda was motherly. So Swami Prabhavananda's words here about the characteristics of the fatalist are fatherly. They're a little scolding. I repeat that Swami Swahananda would have taken a different attitude. He would have said, well, no, they just haven't discovered what it is in them that will motivate them. So let's hear this in that spirit, both of those spirits. The fatherly sternness and the motherly love and forgiveness. Not that Swami Prabhavananda wasn't loving and forgiving in the moment to any of his disciples and devotees. He was. As a matter of fact, he was known for his love. But it was a fatherly kind of love. Anything else from anyone?
So before the idea of fatalism is being discussed, the preceding sentences kind of talk about what I'm thinking about is like an atheist with integrity. And
Yes.
integrity is really what we're trying to get at. I think the message there is great because a lot of times the next generation, the nieces and nephews, when they get together and they're doing very well, going to the best schools and joining the best professional firms, I think that piece of advice of what integrity means is probably very prime here that he's giving. But that's just the observation. On the flip side, I'm trying to understand what Swamiji is trying to get at by saying that atheists probably has some difficulty there. If they are following the path of integrity, doing everything in the karma yoga sense similarly, but the only difference is they are atheists. What is the message out there?
Well, the atheist is likely to seek whatever they seek in, as the Swami said, in time and the material world. The time within time, space, and causation, and therefore its resultant, the material world. Everything is constantly changing. Things are much more difficult than they may seem on the surface. And so the atheist may, because they're seeking these kinds of things in the material world and are almost inevitably in some way or another defeated, they risk falling into this fatalistic attitude. What the Swami was gesturing at by saying these people are looking within time and the material world is that if you look into the timeless, the eternal, and the spiritual realm, there is no such thing as failure. There is only not yet succeeding. And this is why he says in his instructions for meditation, the second, third, and fourth instructions are patience, patience with yourself, patience with the process, perseverance, because nothing will happen as it could have happened if you don't persevere day in and day out, week in and week out, month in and month out, year in and year out, This is what it means to persevere. You follow the spiritual path. With what? With the expectation that at some time the result you are seeking will be achieved. And there will be no failure. There will be only not yet, not yet, not yet. But at some point, you'll wake up, whether it's in the shrine, some moment like with Thomas Merton on the street in Kentucky, or like Scrooge on Christmas morning, and you'll say, I'm not the man or woman I was. I'm not the man or woman I was. Because something has been realized. Something has been experienced that is not within time, space, and causation. Does that make it clear?
It does. Thank you.
Atheist might not be the best word in this discussion, because there, many, if not most Buddhists are atheists. I think, and there are humanists and naturists. There are people who see, nature as what we would call the divine. They don't call it divine, but they see this bigger than themselves power in the universe. And I don't think to equate atheists with fatalists is maybe he's just trying to discourage his audience.
He's not saying that atheists are fatalists.
Mhm.
He's saying that atheists risk becoming fatalists when,
Okay.
if they are seeking in things in time and the material world, they are almost inevitably defeated.
Mhm.
And so he's not saying that atheists and fatalists are the same.
No, I know, but
And he would have agreed entirely with everything you just said, except that he is not equating the two.
I personally feel like it's not necessary to use those terms, atheists or fatalists or anything. It's more just people who are attached to the fruits of their work, and they're, who think this is mine, this is me. And that's what causes pain.
Understood, dear.
Yeah. Anyway.
Swami Prabhupada did not insist that everyone agree with him. There was no such thing as dogma in his vocabulary.
I think also there might be the reason of some of this might be like at least in India, lot of people have sort of misunderstood these laws of karma and stuff like that, and they think that, oh, whatever is written in our fate will happen, and it's really like a sort of a pseudoscience or whatever to sort of lull people into like some sort of like tamas, so you don't need to do anything, you don't need to do any tapasya, no sort of austerity, whatever, just so I think it's probably to sort of counter that sort of negativity. I think the reason why he mentions these things.
Yeah, I think there's something of that, because that doesn't exist just in India. It also exists here. We have to remember he published this book some years back, and in a sense there's some of the language that seems to us a little dated, but then that's why he published this book, because people were making that complaint. And they were making it as a complaint about Swami Vivekananda's translation of Patanjali, translation and commentary, which he published as Raja Yoga. And people were saying that the language and the examples and metaphors that he used were dated and hard to understand. So it's constantly evolving, which is where Cindy was coming from. Things have evolved from from what the Swami was talking about to his American audience in, I think, 1948 when this book was published. Anything else from anyone?
I have a comment, Brother Shankara. This fed attitude it's a very self-serving attitude for those people. It's all fate. It's all fate. It serves them temporarily, not permanently, just temporarily. It's like a Band-Aid
Yes.
treatment for that particular moment.
Good, well said.
That's all.
Yeah. No, they'll chafe. They'll continue to chafe that they haven't prevailed. Anything else before Haima reads on? Okay.
Sutra number 2 in that same chapter. Thus, we may cultivate the power of concentration and remove the obstacles to enlightenment, which cause all our sufferings. One more time. Sutra number 2. Thus, we may cultivate the power of concentration and remove the obstacles to enlightenment, which cause all our sufferings. Next, Sutra number 3. These obstacles, the causes of man's sufferings, are ignorance, egoism, attachment, aversion, and the desire to cling to life. Number 3, one more time. These obstacles, the causes of man's sufferings, are ignorance, egoism, attachment, aversion, and the desire to cling to life. Number 4, ignorance creates all the other obstacles. They may exist either in a potential or a vestigial form, or they may have been temporarily overcome or fully developed.
Okay, before we go on and hear what the Swami says, is there anything that anyone would like to ask or comment from their own experience about these sutras 2, 3, and 4, which talk about how the performance of what's recommended in Sutra 1 will overcome these things. And so then the Patanjali goes on to enumerate what are these things, what are these obstacles, and how do they appear to us? How do they? What is our way of putting them into language?
Power of concentration is, in other words, it's a meditation, like going into solitude, right, Brother Shankara?
Not necessarily into solitude, but yes, definitely concentration becoming meditation. But if we think of people cooperating with one another, they may be in a very high degree of concentration on their tasks, but not be in solitude. But that's concentration, not meditation. So we typically do meditation in solitude, although not necessarily. I've sat in a temple full of people in Hollywood practicing meditation all at once. And believe you me, it gets powerful. Anything else from anyone?
Yeah, I know that in Swamiji often combines 2 or 3 sutras together and then gives the detailed commentary. Is that how other commentators do it, or is there any rhyme or reason coming from the original sutras how to combine, for instance, here 2, 3, and 4 together?
Boy, howdy, that's a big question. Yes, other commentators do it differently. They will comment on, so to speak, every phrase. The Swami groups these together because that's how he sees it. He sees that these things are related, and his commentary will be following from the logic of his conclusion that they're related. He will, as you will see, give a commentary that speaks to them all. But in doing that, he doesn't ignore their particulars, the particular parts of them, as we'll see. He just thinks that they are so interrelated that there's no reason to, it actually would be a detriment to not recognize that interrelatedness and comment on them altogether, to recognize that interrelatedness. Patanjali gave no direction whatsoever about how this should be done. He simply gave us these aphorisms. He did not himself write the commentary, write a commentary. He simply said these things, and they were meant to be, in Sanskrit, the word bhashya, exposition or unpacking of them was meant to be done by a teacher. That's his
Number 3 is so powerful.
Please read it and tell us why you say so.
These obstacles, the cause of man's suffering, are ignorance, egoism, attachment, aversion, and a desire to cling to life. That's one that, I mean, I struggled with that one for many, many years, and I guess I'm still struggling with it. I have, you know, it's something that if you really understand it, it makes a difference in your life.
That's exactly it. It's like Swami Prabhavananda's experience with studying the Vivekachudamani. It's exactly what you said, Robert. When the Swami said what he said to Swami Turiyananda about the qualifications that Shankaracharya listed for being a successful jnani, Swami Prabhupada said, well, if you've achieved all those, it seems like you've already achieved the goal.
Yeah. Each one of those, you could spend a lifetime dealing with, trying to perfect each one.
Well, exactly, which is why the key one, as is pointed out, is ignorance. Ignorance gives rise to all the rest. So we do what? We try to dispel our ignorance. And this is the meaning of guru, the remover of darkness, the remover of ignorance. And so whether we have a face-to-face guru or whether we find them in books or in our dreams or visions, they come to dispel our ignorance. And the ignorance gives rise to all those other enumerated egoism, attachment, aversion, clinging to life.
And as you proceed to manage each one of those, once you feel that you have managed one, it goes to a deeper level and you recognize that you haven't managed it. And once you manage that, it goes to a deeper level. It keeps going deeper and deeper.
Yes,
that's why I said, I guess I'm still dealing with it, because there's parts of it that you recognize.
Yes.
And there are parts beyond your recognition.
Yes, we have our waking awareness, we have our active subconscious, and we have our latent subconscious. And then we have that which gives rise to our latent subconscious. And so as you say, Robert, the deeper you dig, the more you find.
Yes.
Which is why it's important not to try and you free yourself from each attachment, each limitation. Free yourselves from the primary cause of your ignorance, which Sri Krishna says, your primary delusion, your fundamental delusion is that you are the doer. Get rid of this delusion, and the rest of it all comes undone. All right, down to the bottom of the pile. And so, because when we don't feel as if we are the doer, that it is the divine presence, the divine being that is doing all this, and we are observing it, then all those other aspects of our ignorance arise and pass away, arise and pass away, arise and pass away. Our sense of attachment to something, we see it come. If we don't hold on to it, if we just observe it, we notice it passes away. Same with our aversions. Aversions are a little more difficult. This clinging to life, it takes the full experience of our being that observer, that divine being itself, that allows us not to cling to life, because we see, oh, this life is also something. This particular life is also something that just arises and passes away. And it is just a garment we're wearing as the observer during the time of this manifestation of our being as the observer, and then the subtle body which cloaks it, and then the gross body, which is the field of action in this world of action. So you're so right, Robert, so right. But the fundamental ignorance, the fundamental delusion, according to Sri Krishna and Sri Ramakrishna, and for that matter of Christ, if you go looking, is that you are the doer. Christ said, I am the vine, you are the branches. You're not doing this, I am as the vine. Anything else from anyone on that point, or any other point that we've been talking about?
This number 3, all these ignorance, egoism, these are all expanded from number 4, Brother Shankara. 4, 5, 6, they all explain every one of them, because I've read this book before.
Oh, yes, of course, yes. And so has Robert many times.
Yeah, he expands this about ignorance in 4, and then egoism in 5, and then he goes on explaining how it works.
Yes.
So we will be seeing a lot more of this expansion.
Yes, exactly. We'll hear what the Swami has to say.
Obstacles, yes.
Anything else from anyone? We're still got good time here, so we're fine.
Okay.
All right, please read on from.
Okay, number 4, ignorance creates all the other obstacles. They may exist either in a potential or a vestigial form, or they may have been temporarily overcome or fully developed. Austerity, study, and the dedication of the fruits of one's work to God are, as we saw in the preceding aphorism, the 3 preliminary steps toward that power of concentration, which makes possible the state of perfect yoga.
Perfect yoga is complete identification with the observer, no longer identifying with the subtle body and all of its attributes, or the gross body and its attributes. This is perfect yoga. So read that again, please.
Yes, austerity, study, and the dedication of the fruits of one's work to God are, as we saw in the preceding aphorism, the 3 preliminary steps toward that power of concentration, which makes possible the state of perfect yoga. That is their positive value. but they have a negative value also, which is equally important. They are the means of removing the obstacles to concentration and enlightenment which exist within our minds. The word obstacle is worth considering because it suggests a difference in emphasis which distinguishes Hindu from Christian thought on this subject. When a Christian speaks of a sin, he means generally a positive act of disobedience and ingratitude toward God. And by God, he means God the Father, the reality as it appears within time and space, in the aspect of parent and creator of the universe, whom Hindus call Ishvara. I can go back and read this one more time, Brother Shankara. Seems very complex sentence here. The word obstacle is worth considering because it suggests a difference in emphasis which distinguishes Hindu from Christian thought on this subject. When a Christian speaks of a sin, he means generally a positive act of disobedience and ingratitude toward God, and by God, he means God the Father, the reality as it appears within time and space, in the aspect of parent and creator of the universe, whom Hindus call Ishvara. See chapter 1, Aphorism 23. When Patanjali speaks of an obstacle, he refers rather to the negative effect which follows such an act, the whirling dust cloud of ignorance, which then arises and obscures the light of the Atman within us. That is to say, Christian thought emphasizes the offense against Ishvara, who is other than ourselves, while Hindu thought emphasizes the offense against our own true nature, which is the Atman. The difference is not fundamental, but it is important. The value of the Christian approach is that it heightens our sense of the significance and enormity of sin by relating it to a being whom we have every reason to love and obey, our Creator and Father. The value of the Hindu approach is that it presents the consequences of sin in their ultimate aspect, which is simply alienation from the reality within us. Both approaches have, of course, their characteristic dangers if not properly understood. The danger of the Hindu approach lies in our psychological inability to imagine the Atman in the way that we all imagine Ishvara, more or less. It is easy to feel contrition for an offense against Ishvara and to resolve, for the time being at least, not to repeat it. But the offense of erecting obstacles against the enlightening Atman is not so immediately evident because we are perpetually slipping back into the confusion of identifying the Atman with our ego. For example, we say kindly and almost approvingly of an habitual drunkard or dope addict, he has nobody's enemy but his own, and do not realize what tragic nonsense this statement is. It is only occasionally that a sense of our alienation from the ground and refuge of our being comes over us in a huge wave of wretchedness. How far art thou from me, cried a great saint, who am so near to thee? The Hindu must therefore beware of taking his sins.
Hang on.
Sure, Brother Shankara.
Let me just say, this may seem unnecessary explanation to many of us who are sitting here today. This comparison and contrast between the Christian view and the Hindu view. It's important to remember the audience for whom this was written. They were mostly, almost in Swami Prabhuvananda's day, there were very few Hindus in the United States, and virtually none in the Swami's congregation. So he was writing this for Americans who were brought up in the Christian tradition and had a lot of samskaras, a lot of their conditioned thinking was out of this Christian way of being raised and being taught. I am among them. And so, though I came late to the Swami, this was still true in 1973 when I got there, that he was speaking almost exclusively to Americans. And so these were very important thoughts for those of us who were raised as Christians, particularly those who were raised by devout Christians and who made devout Christians of us. This Christian way of, this more dualistic way of thinking is emphatically a part of the Christian tradition, although Christ teaches beyond it. I mentioned, I am the vine, ye are the branches. I and my Father are one. Therefore, the vine and the branches are all one with the Father. I am the vine, rooted in the Father. Therefore, Father, vine, and branches are all one. This is Christ's non-dual teaching. But it isn't the way it's presented in most, particularly most Protestant churches. So I wanted to explain why the Swami is being so careful here in distinguishing these two approaches to this word obstacle or sin. Sin means missing the mark. That's what that word means. So it is an obstacle. You've missed the mark because you weren't accurate in your doing and your aiming. So you've created an obstacle, or there was an obstacle that caused you to aim incorrectly. Any comments or questions about any of that?
In this last couple of paragraphs, number of times we talk about positive value and negative value. I'm almost going to go back to the first paragraph this time I read this first time, that Trinity study and dedication, they have positive value, but it has negative value, but yet negative value in removing obstacles. I'm not quite understanding how is that negative.
Well, they allow us to remove our ignorance by allowing us to concentrate. When we concentrate, then they allow us to identify with the Atman. So it is their negative value is that they take away from us this identification with the things that are obstacles. Is that clear? I'm not sure I explained it well.
It's clear, but it seems to be, to me, a benefit, which probably is a positive. So,
well, he's saying there's positive even in the negative. That's what he's saying.
Right. Okay.
That it is that though it has both positive and negative aspects, for the spiritual aspirant, it ends up being a net positive because it allows us to go beyond beyond that which arises and passes away. Anything else from anyone? Okay. Please, Haima, read from the Hindu mind, or the Hindu must therefore.
Yes. The Hindu must therefore beware of taking his sins too lightly, of relapsing into an easy optimism based on the doctrine of reincarnation. He must beware of thinking, after all, I'm really the Atman, and I have millions of lives ahead of me, as many as I want. I will get
If indeed that's what you want, yes.
I will get around to knowing my real nature sooner or later. What's the hurry? This is the attitude which is condemned by Augustine in his Confessions. I, miserable young man, had entreated chastity of thee and said, grant me chastity and continence, but not yet.
Well, please let me read that, dear, so I get Augustine.
Sure.
Okay. This is the attitude which is condemned by Augustine in his Confessions. I, miserable young man, have entreated chastity of thee and said, grant me chastity and continency, but not yet. This is so powerful because he meant it. He meant it. He was in that dilemma. He knew what was right and yet didn't really want it yet. So how is God going to grant that prayer? He's going to grant it by saying, all right, not yet, which is what the Swami is saying. The danger of all of us who practice this is if we're not focused on this idea that I want this to be my last incarnation. I want this to be my last lifetime. If that is not our very high priority, then we're likely to be what was just read. Well, I'll get around to it later. Make me perfect, but not yet. Anything else from anyone?
I am glad that Swamiji mentioned the Hindu must therefore beware of taking his sins too lightly, which is very true, Brother Shankara. Some Hindus, I know, they always take it so lightly. Oh, it's all God doing it, even though there is something they can do for themselves with God's knowledge, that God gave us knowledge. They don't do it. Oh, it's all.
Well, this is taking refuge in this God alone is the doer without really knowing what that means.
Exactly.
It is, as Robert pointed out,
Truly.
it's ignorance all the way down on the one side.
Yes.
As if we
Totally ignorant.
if we don't focus on the truth that the real ignorance is rooted in the idea that somehow we are doing these things, and coming to grips with the idea, real grips with the idea that God alone is the doer. And if you do come to real grips with that idea, there's no question of sinning anymore. As Sri Ramakrishna says, you become like the perfect dancer. You cannot put a foot wrong. You become like the perfect singer. You cannot hit a wrong note. And so that's because there's been true self-surrender. True, not this surrender in thought and its resultant language. That's not the same thing at all. Not the same thing at all. We can mouth the words, God alone is the doer. But until we have achieved a measure of real self-surrender, we have no idea at all what that really means. Any other comments or questions from anyone?
Brother, I think this also shows that whatever the sort of the written like statement, knowledge, instruction, whatever it is, if someone really wants to distort it to do the exact opposite of what it is intended to do, they can.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, dear. uh, our minds are, as the non-dual teacher, the direct path non-dual teacher Schwartz says, the mind is hardwired and very intelligent, and it can rationalize just about anything, which is why the power of concentration must be there to take us beyond the left mind into the other deeper aspect of ourselves, the heart and right mind, if you will.
Brother, I was contemplating about this, the four characters like right, left, emotional, and thinking. And and I was thinking like, what is the divine form of mother that I should project before each character to sort of divinize that? And I thought that left emotion is basically it's to develop strength. Left thinking is to develop perfection. Right emotion is to develop harmony, and right thinking is to develop wisdom. So left emotion is Kali, and left thinking is Saraswati, and right emotion is Lakshmi. What would be the right thinking, or maybe my entire sort of speculative analysis is incorrect?
Well, this is just one way of verbalizing it for yourself, Rajiv. It isn't as if it's right or wrong. Follow this to its logical conclusion, and the goddess, the form of the goddess that you are looking for on that right side, would be Durga.
So right thinking would be Durga, right?
If you study what it is that Durga is, if you go to the Chandi, yes, you'll see what it is that is said. These are 700 verses in praise of Mother Durga and the Devi Mahatmya. And so she is all of these others, but in the form that you're searching for in words, it would be Durga. Which is why we just had Navaratri and the chanting of Jai Shri Durga and so on. Because she is that which confers wisdom. In Hebrew, Shekinah. In Greek, Sophia. This form of the goddess that contains all other forms and aspects. But follow your own thinking, Rajiv. You're doing fine. Just let her rip. Just you have this mind that loves contemplation and classification. Just let her rip. Make of things what you will. And the more we think these kinds of thoughts, the more we see, there is something beyond that is motivating all this. And this is the dawn of self-surrender.
As I tell my musicians when I'm teaching them, there's no such thing as a wrong note.
Yes.
You just don't understand the note that you have played as yet.
Yes. And you don't know where it fits. Exactly, Robert. So when the music, as I've seen happen to you, When the music begins to play you, you lose all outer consciousness. You lose your sense of time. You lose your sense of place. The music begins to play you. And this is why that perfect singer cannot hit a wrong note, because the singing is singing the singer, and the music is dancing the dancer. So anything else from anyone? This has been absolutely wonderful. I mean, we're reveling in the self here, loved ones. We're reveling in the self as expressed and felt among us. Jai Jai, that divine self. Anything else from anyone? All right. Oh, dearly beloved, a flower at your feet for each one who comes to your open door. A flower at your feet for each one who stands by your open door and says, come to me, offering to break this world's chain that binds us down to ignorance, suffering, and death. A flower at your feet for each one who takes the path that you have struck through this your jungle world. Om Amen. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace and beneficence be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai. Durga, Durga, Durga. May we be safe. May we be healthy. May we be cheerful. May we have peace of mind. And may we be always in the loving and protective embrace of the Divine Being as our Mother and Father. Any final thought from anyone? All right, dears, tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock, we'll begin an open forum on Jnana Yoga. There's a description of it on the website, on the Facebook page, and in the newsletter, which is accessible through the Facebook page if you don't receive it. But we'll have an open forum. First 20 minutes will be devoted to defining what is meant by the terms that describe Jnana Yoga or Advaita Vedanta. And then the rest of the hour will be spent in conversation with you about what all that may or may not mean to you, and how it plays into the life that each of us lives. It should be a very interesting discussion because it's very much related to what we just discussed today, of course. All right, dears. Until tomorrow morning, for those of you who decide to join us, this has always been so joyous and uplifting to be in this holy company. And so I will say, fare thee well.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
And thanks for reading for us, Haima.
Oh, I'm honored, Brother Shankara. It was wonderful.
Jeff has been reading for us.
Yeah.
But he has a
Exactly.
cold today, and it wouldn't have done his throat any good. And so it was very sweet of you to read. And you have a good sense of how to read these things and when to repeat and so on. So,
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
as they say in Italian, which is the Italian way of saying, and away we go, avanti.